Killers at the core, they're different from us, which means they can't be trusted. We must sound the drums of war. They're savages.
And that's exactly what's going to happen with King Philip's War. The drums of war are going to be beating once again. We already learned about the Pequot War in a previous lecture. Today we're going to take a look at King Philip's War. And remember what we learned. After the Pequot War in 1637, there's this uneasy peace for a few decades. The colony of the New England region, the colonies rather, are growing, and there's lots of people coming over, men, women, and children. Remember, they're doing their Puritan thing. They have their small town settlements with the importance, of course, of the church, of education, so people could read the Bible, and you have the town hall meetings where you have all male church members with this direct democracy, and all this stuff's going really well, but you still got the presence of native people. The indigenous people don't disappear. And there was an attempt amongst the Puritans to try to address their continued presence. And it goes into this, hey, why don't we convert them?
Welcome to the church, volume 2.
Welcome to the church. In fact, they set up these praying towns, and basically what it was is you get these missionaries, like the guy you see there with the cool hat, John Eliot, where they have these little towns where native people are attempted to be converted. Now, this isn't as serious of an attempt as the French Jesuit missionaries in Canada or the Spanish Catholic missionaries throughout New Spain. You know, that was a real hardcore sell by those colonization efforts, which is an important difference between the English. But in these praying towns, you know, the basic idea is full conversion. They want the native people to give up their old way of life and become good Christians and adopt Christian principles and a Christian lifestyle. And you see in this Bible, it's translated into the native language, and they do have some success. You do have some praying Indians, quote unquote, that adopt Christianity. Now, not as serious of an attempt as the French or the Spanish. Now keep in mind, this is happening, and the colony continues to grow. And one of the big problems for native people in the effort to defend their native land is the lack of intertribal unity. Prior to the British colonies even being established in 1620 at Plymouth, disease had already wreaked all sorts of havoc amongst the native people along the East Coast. They had come into contact with fishermen from Europe, and disease was reducing their population numbers. But even before that, there was traditional native rivalries. And this lack of unity is going to be a big problem, because now you have the Europeans, and they're there, the Puritans are there, and they are expanding on native land, and there's a difficulty in joining together under one command to try to mount a resistance. However, that is going to change when a guy starts cooking up a plan named
If you smell what the rock is cooking,
Metacom. And I throw out a picture of the Rock because he's just Metacom, King Philip, as the Europeans referred to him as. Metacom is kind of a badass dude. And those are two images of what he supposedly looked like. And Metacom is the chief of the Wampanoag tribe in the region. And he has a goal. His father passes away, he takes over leadership, and he wants to push out the settlers, the colonists, from his territory. The same old conflicts are there. Livestock, cows and pigs are trampling on native crops. There's conflict over land rights and land ownership. There's the shrinking of the hunting grounds of the native people. And there's all sorts of tensions. And he, Metacom, starts getting the tribes in the region. He starts convincing them that perhaps they should join forces. They have no common government. There's tribal tensions. There's distinct cultures amongst these people, but yet Metacom is very effective at kind of putting together this alliance. And what ends up happening, he starts making some plans. Now, a Christian Indian, a so-called praying Indian, tells the colony, he's like, yo, dude, this guy Metacom is up to something. He's planning something. And of course, Metacom, pulls the shaggy, it wasn't me. And he says, no, I wasn't, but what ends up happening is the Christian Indian that ends up ratting on Metacom gets murdered. In retaliation for that, 3 Wampanoag Indians are hung by the colonists. And in response to all this, in 1675, the immediate or the kind of the spark of this whole thing is the hanging of these 3 Wampanoag tribesmen. But really, it's all these underlying tensions. And what you get is the last stand. And in 1675, the native people, led by their leader Metacom, King Philip, as the settlers, the colonists called him, basically send a message to the colonists: you don't belong and we're not going to take it.
You don't belong. Oh, we're not gonna take it.
And this begins what is known as King Philip's War. And what's important about King Philip's War is that the native people, unlike the Pequot War, are somewhat united. They have more weapons than before. They had been trading with the Europeans for a lot longer now. They have guns, and they hit the New England colonies hard. Over half of the settlements, 52 towns, are attacked during King Philip's War. 12 are completely destroyed. Hundreds and hundreds of colonists are killed, especially along the frontier out here in the boonies, so to speak, away from cities like Boston. You get all these little towns hit. And there's huge fear in the colonies because the natives are able to mount this huge resistance in 1675, 1676, and the colonists seem almost powerless to deal with this. Now, fortunately for the colonists, they had created this kind of confederation called the New England Confederation, where they're basically saying to one another, let's stay together. Let's stay together. And this New England Confederation was around, I think, like since the 1640s. This date's not important, but it was a political and military alliance between all the different New England colonies, except for your boy, Rhode Island, who's crossed out there. And remember, Rhode Island always kind of did things their own way. So this New England Confederation starts organizing and mounting in, early 1676 an alliance to coordinate the attacks against the native people. Now, important thing about the New England Confederation for you APUSH people out there is this is really an example of the colonies bonding, so to speak. This is going to lay the basis for collaboration later on during another event called the American Revolution. So you have these colonies working together. Now, unfortunately for the native people, what starts off as this big last stand, right? We're going to fight against the colonists, starts to fall apart. You get Colonel Benjamin Church leading the colonists. He's one of the major figures in this fight. And the native people start to lose. And the reason why they start to lose is really a lack of supplies. They don't have the ammo and the guns to last them for multiple seasons. They were reliant on trade with the English and the Dutch. And when that trade starts to dry up, well, they're going to have problems fighting. And then Church starts getting some native people, once he defeats them, to join the English side. In fact, a lot of Christian native people especially joined the British colonists against King Philip and his allies. And as the losses start mounting, King Philip Metacom starts losing allies. And of course, then the big event happens. There's the great swamp fight, a really bloody, brutal fight where lots of people are killed. But King Philip eventually is killed. He's beheaded. His head is put on display for 2 decades in the Plymouth colony. And once King Philip is killed, the rebellion, the war, starts to really kind of fade. Now this battle, this King Philip's War, is important for a number of reasons. You got anywhere between 500-600 colonists killed. A lot of people killed. Huge blow to the population of the New England colonies. Causes fear and a lot of questions about the colony. The economy is destroyed. A lot more native people are killed. Estimates about 3,000. We don't know for sure. For the natives that lost, if you weren't killed, you were captured. Many were shipped off to slavery to the West Indies, places like Bermuda, once again. And the most significant aspect of King Philip's War is the fact that it is the last stand of native resistance. In fact, the defeat of King Philip marks the end of native resistance, or I should rather say widespread resistance amongst the native people. Following the defeat of King Philip, this basically land is wide open for the New England colonists to continue to expand. It's the last major native battle in the New England territory. That, sadly, boys and girls, is the end of today's lecture, King Philip's War. Make sure you hit like on the little thumbs up sign, and of course, subscribe to Jocz Productions. Good luck on your studying. Have a beautiful day. Peace!